Hello and welcome everyone to lesson 3 in this Chess Beginner to Winner series, in which I try and help you take the guesswork out of figuring out what to study in chess, and we take you from an absolute beginner all the way up to someone that can win games at chess tournaments. So, in the first 2 lessons, we covered how to set up the chessboard and how to move the pieces. And in the second lesson involved how to castle, how to move en passant, and we talked about when the pawns make it to the other side of the board, they can promote to a queen, a rook, a knight, or a bishop. And today we'll be talking about, once you start playing chess, how do you actually win? Well, to win a game of chess, you have to checkmate your king. And, for those beginners out there, you might ask, well, what is checkmate? And also, you may say, well, I've heard of something called stalemate also. Is that the same thing? Well, they're close, but 2 different things. To win a game, you must checkmate your opponent, and a stalemate will result in a draw. So, we'll talk about the differences between those 2 today. So let's say we're playing a game here and the pieces are all set up in the beginning position, and white makes a move that is not normally a good move. They decide to move their F pawn. And the problem with moving this pawn, it leaves an opening on your king here. So let's say that the opponent plays a good first move. He pushes his pawn in front of his king 2 squares forward on the first move, and this lets room for his bishop to come out and also his queen. And now white follows up his not so good move with an even worse move by moving here to G4. And this allows the opponent to checkmate by moving the queen here. And the game is over. So this is the fastest possible way that a game of chess can be won. And, this doesn't happen often because it required white to make these 2 terrible moves in a row. And it allowed the queen to jump down here. And the difference between check and checkmate is that a check is just when you're attacking your opponent's king here. But a checkmate is when that king is under attack and he cannot capture the attacker, he cannot block the attacker, or run from the attacker. So if we go back here 2 moves, let's say instead, white plays this move. Well, now, if the queen tries to go for a checkmate, white has options. He's in check. Whenever your king is being attacked, the rules are that you have to get out of that check. You cannot make a move and leave your king in check. So white cannot move a knight or another piece, except he does have the option to move a pawn over here to block the attack of the queen. So just remember, whenever you're being attacked, your king is being attacked and you're in check. So the queen has moved here to H4, attacking the king. There are 3 options whenever you're in check. Capture the attacker, which is not possible because nothing is around that can capture this queen. Run, which is possible. Now the king cannot run up here to F2 because the queen still covers that square as well. But the king could run over here to D2, but that wouldn't be so great a move because now the king would not be able to castle and he'd be kind of stuck in the middle of the board. The other option is to block the attacker. So this is a good move because it blocks the checking queen, and now that queen is under attack and will have to retreat. So that is just another example of how the king can come under attack, and you have to be able to tell the difference between when it is a check and when it's a checkmate. So if we go back here, once again, if this pawn moves forward, well then we have queen here to h4 delivering checkmate, because the king cannot capture the attacker, the king cannot block, and the king cannot run. So I'll show you some more examples of possible checkmates here. Let's say white moves here, e4, and black decides to copy and move here. Well then, white moves here, lining up once again on this f pawn. And this f pawn is one of the weaker points on both sides of the board because the only thing protecting it is the king. And we'll see why that can be dangerous. So the bishop lines up on this f pawn here. And so now it's black's turn. So let's say black isn't sure what to do, and maybe he just moves this knight. Well then, now the queen has an option of moving here or here, and lines up with the bishop on this f pawn. So the threat is a mating threat move by moving that queen here. So if black doesn't notice the threat and just, let's say he moves a pawn here, well now the queen can jump in here and deliver a checkmate. Now why is this a checkmate? Well, the piece cannot be captured by the king or any other piece, especially the king, because the king's never allowed to move onto a square that would put him in check. And so the bishop is covering that queen and also that f7 square. So the king cannot capture the queen because it's protected by the bishop. And also, because this king is under attack, he can't capture. Whenever you're in check, your options are capture the attacker, which is not possible, run, which is not possible because the queen is so close to the king, and the queen cuts off the e7 square and the d7 square, or block the attacker. And nothing can block the queen because the queen and the king are right next to each other. So this would be checkmate, and this is known as a scholar's mate, where you basically bring up your bishop, line up on the f7 square, and then you bring your queen out and do the same. And it's easy to stop. So if we go back and look at this, let's see here. So after e4, e5, the bishop lines up here, and then black just brings his knight out, and the queen moves here. Well, now, if he just plays this move, this is one possible way to block this attack. So now the queen can't reach this f7 square. So even if the queen retreated back to here and attacked again, well, the threat is once again to capture on f7 with the queen and deliver mate. But if black sees this move coming, he can just block with either his queen or knight. So, I don't know, let's say this move is played. Well, the queen kind of attacks white's queen now and blocks this threat. So, I hope these two examples give you some idea of how a checkmate works in chess. So now I'll clear the board off, set up a position here, and I'll show you some other possible checkmates. some very simple ones just to give you an idea of different checkmate possibilities. So let's say the king is here and white has a king here and a queen over here. Well, if it's white's turn, there are different ways he can checkmate. He can just go ahead and move his queen to here, and this is a checkmate because the queen cannot be blocked, it cannot be captured because it is protected by the king, and there's nowhere for the king to run. And so if we go back and look at this, whenever this queen is on the edge of the board, instead of moving here, the queen could also just move to the back row here, attacking the king, and the king is also checkmated here because the white king cuts off these escape squares. Now, let's say if the queen was here and the king was over here and attacks, well, now the king would have an escape square out here to run away. So another example of a difference there between a checkmate and not being able to deliver checkmate because the king has a way to escape. So now we'll take a look at, another example. Let's say the king is here and if the queen is down here and there are pawns in the way and it's white's move. Well, with the queen, white could move up here and also deliver a mate. And here white's checkmating the black king because black's own pawns kind of trap him in a tomb here. So if only black would have moved this pawn forward, now it would not be a checkmate because after check, the king would be able to escape here. So just remember that if your king is trapped in behind its pawns, a lot of times it's good to make a little escape hole for that king to run away to. All right, so now I've shown you some examples of checkmate. We'll take a look at a few examples of stalemate and see what the difference is. So let's say that this king was, right here, and the king is here, and white's king is here, and these pawns are gone, so let me get rid of these. So let's say you're winning the game. You have the white pieces and you're trying to move in for the checkmate. Well, if it's white's turn to move and he pushes his king forward thinking, on my next move, I'm going to go ahead and checkmate and win the game. Well, now it would be a stalemate because a stalemate is when it's the king. It can be you or your opponent, but whoever's turn it is to move. It's your turn to move, and there are no legal moves on the board. That would be a stalemate, and a stalemate is a draw. People may say, well, I was winning. I have all these extra pieces, and it's still a draw. Well, that's because the rules of chess say that to win, you must checkmate. So you have to make sure that you actually deliver a checkmate and not a stalemate. So here, it's black's turn to move, and he cannot go anywhere because the queen is cutting off the escape squares around the king, and the white king is also cutting off this escape square. So if we go back to this position, another move that would have been better is to just move the queen up here, trapping the king on this back row, and the king would have to move here, and now you can move your king up, and the king still has two squares that it can go to. The black king could move here, and then that would lead to a checkmate. Or the king could have gone over here, and same thing. It could lead to a checkmate by going here, or you could even go here and deliver a mate because you're attacking with the queen and the king is cutting off any escape squares. And so something that's interesting to note is we'll move this queen out of the way and put the kings down here in the center. You're never allowed to put your king on a square that's under attack. It's illegal in chess. So the two kings can never move beside each other because they would be attacking each other, and that's always illegal. So just remember that when you're moving, you could move your king up here in front of your opponent's king, and it stops him from making any forward progress. So he would have to go sideways or backwards. So I don't know, let's say he goes backwards. Well, you could just keep pushing him forward. So if he goes sideways, well, then you could move your king, or excuse me, your queen up to help and slowly push that king. And even here, now he can't go sideways anymore because the queen is covering him. So he would have to back up. And then, the queen, one of the better moves is just to move the queen on the second rank and trap the opponent's king on the edge of the board. And then if he moves, you can go ahead and move forward now with your king, and whatever he does, you'll be able to mate him. If he goes here, you can deliver mate. But you want to always avoid the stalemate. And another tricky thing is, let's say you have your king, your opponent's king, in a stalemated position, and you think, it's a stalemate. But not if they have another piece. Like, let's say they have a pawn on the board. Well, now they can move this pawn up the board, and it's not a stalemate yet because they have another piece to move besides the king. So that's one way to avoid a stalemate. But once this pawn is captured, let's say the king moves here, and then you capture with check, and then he moves here. Well, now you have to be careful, because if you move here, this would be a stalemate once again, because the queen is cutting off the escape squares and the king is covering this escape square here. So instead, it would have been better to once again move up here on the second rank, trapping the king on the edge of the board. And then if the king runs away, well, white can just move in here. And now the king cannot move here because of the queen, so he would have to retreat, and you have a checkmate. All right. Well, as a review, just remember, a checkmate is when your king is under attack, or you are attacking your opponent's king, and the king cannot do one of three things. It cannot, or any of these three things. It cannot capture the attacker, it cannot block the attacker, or run away from the attacker. So if the king is in check and it cannot capture the attacker, block the attacker, or run away, then that is a checkmate, as we see in this position here. Now, as far as a stalemate, that is when it is the king's turn to move, but he has no legal moves on the board. There could be a lot of other pieces on the board. Let's say there's a bunch of pawns all over the board, but if they're blocked and they have nowhere to go, and the king has nowhere to go, well, then it's a stalemate, as we see here, because the queen is cutting off the escape squares around the king, and the king cuts off this d7 square, and you have a stalemate. And a stalemate is a draw, no matter how white could have all these pieces all over the board. He could have an entire army, but if black has no legal moves, then it's a stalemate, and that is a drawn game. So you could be winning, and your opponent could escape with a draw by getting stalemated by you. So just be aware of that. Especially if you're winning a game and you can avoid the stalemate, then avoid that stalemate and go for the checkmate and the win. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this third lesson in the Chess Beginner to Winner series, and that you will continue on your journey and improve your chess game, and one day be able to play and win some tournament games. All right, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Feel free also to leave any comments or suggestions or requests as well for anything chess related that you would like to see in the future chess videos. Okay, well, thank you all and have a great chess day.